So, why am I doing this? I don't know. Nobody on YouTube seems to like Lightlark. I mean, I think out of all the major reviewers that have talked about this, I've been the nicest so far. Hell, this Goodreads review right here, at the time of this filming, is the second highest rated one for this book. Skyshade, Lightlark number 3. I have an appreciation for the few funny bits, and I find the flaws of Lightlark so far funny, but why am I here? Why am I talking about this? I don't know. By the way, check out my merchandise down below. You can get stuff like this hoodie. The best type of laugh is the laugh that you're really not expecting, when it comes out of nowhere, such as a fantasy novel which is intended to be dark and serious. So when you laugh at something like that, as opposed to something that you know is supposed to be a comedy going in, you just laugh harder. The way that in Lightlark everyone and everything bends over to try and make Isla, the main character, look cool and kind and interesting, only for all of their efforts to fall completely flat on their face every time, is funny, at least for now. I'm starting to feel like I'm visiting a freak show in 1868, and I'm ambivalent towards these queer folk. Alas, my elder brothers have informed me that going here is an important part of the passage into manhood, and as I'm wandering around, viewing the function, I notice a lass with fair hair, and then I wake up. Now, Lightlark does have real fans, is the thing. The books have sold pretty well, so I don't know, maybe it's just valuable to have someone pointing out the problems here, just so that the people who read it have a voice of disagreement and they don't get too full of themselves. Or, I don't know, maybe I just feel like doing it for reasons that even I'm not totally understanding of. So, the first two Lightlark books, that's Lightlark and Nightbane, were kind of fun. They were bad, don't get me wrong, but they were mostly just nonsensical and stupid. Skyshade, book 3, is much more badderer than the first two, because by this point, any semblance of creativity and giving a shit has long since left the building. Like, it's always been really obvious that Lightlark primarily exists to provide a protagonist that will allow the audience and author to project themselves onto her. She's beloved by everyone simply for existing, and she gets to do cool shit simply for existing. What she does doesn't matter, all that matters is what she is. But what she isn't actually very impressive either, so we just spend time with people assuring her that she's amazing. And then they do stuff to help her out, usually giving her items and information that she needs to save the day. And Skyshade continues that. There really isn't much more to it than that. I could probably just say that and leave the video there, but I mean, we all have some morbid curiosity about what exactly happens and how this book fails at everything it tries to do. So, I don't know, let's go. Spoilers ahead.
Becca, I promise, as long as you're with me, you will never get hurt.
So, quick recap. The last book was, plot-wise it was a mess, but it ends with Isla remembering that she and Grimm were married while there was a big battle going on, and she agreed to go off with him to end the fighting. And for more, watch my previous video, or someone else's if you really feel like it, but ideally mine. So, Isla and Grimm teleport off together, and then she tells him to take her to the village that she destroyed by accident. Do you remember that? Like, she destroyed a village by accident and then just sort of forgot about it? That was a thing that happened. Anyways, she says that she feels bad, but Grimm says it doesn't matter because she didn't mean to kill anyone.
Oh, fuck off!
Yeah, Isla, you're totally not an out-of-control weapon of mass destruction. You're just a small bean, ooh ooh. Also, Grimm wants to open the portal that they've been trying to open since the end of the first book to get magic to save Isla's life. Remember, like, she died and he brought her back by magically bonding with her as her husband. Do you remember that? That's actually what happened. I'm not making this shit up, but a lot of people are going, oh yeah, I guess that was a thing. Anyways, again, Grimm wants to save her and the realms by gaining infinite magic power, but if he opens the portal, then that will kill Oro, the king of Lightlark, who Isla is in love with, and then she'll be sad, because we can't sacrifice one monarch for the sake of everyone he rules. That might make him look like a servant of the people. Ask not what your king can do for you, ask what you can do for your king. Once again, we can add a fantasy book onto the pile of stuff that just straight up says, monarchs and aristocrats are literally better than everyone else. Like, it's barely even subtext. Anyway, there are some bad storms hitting the Nightshade lands now, which we've not heard about until now. They keep hitting, they're really powerful, they kill a bunch of people, plus there's evil creatures in the storms too. We can't just have a natural disaster that the heroes need to prepare for. They have to have something for them to fight too. That way they can look cool. It's not just the weather. They bring sickness, creatures. Entire villages have been raised by beasts in the night. The tempests are deadlier than the curses even. The Drex appeared during one of them and never left. I don't know, it's very strange because sometimes it seems implied that the storms began a few years ago, but other times it feels like they've been happening for centuries, and other times it feels like it's just been a month or two, based on how people talk about them and how prepared they are. Because no one has built anything to deal with the storms or is used to living under them, because they say hundreds of people die in every storm, but for some reason they don't evacuate or just move somewhere else or build sturdier houses. Does that make sense? No, but it's Lightlark, so no one fucking cares. Anyways, Isla suffers from horrible anguish over being better and more powerful than everyone else, so she wants to suppress her power. So she goes to the magical blacksmith from the last book and asks for some bracelets that she can put on that will keep her from using her powers. And he agrees, but only on the condition that she'll kill him. She's the only one who can because the magical bullshit, whatever. She's the only one who can because she's the main character. And she agrees to do it. She says, I'll kill you later. And he just believes her instead of asking her to do it now. So she gets the bracelets to suppress her power. Do you remember Wraith, the pet small dragon that Isla found and nursed back to health? Well, he's full grown now, and Grimm is riding him. Isla hates Grimm, but they ride the dragon together and she holds on to him, and it's like romantic or something, I don't know. Isla acknowledges to herself a bunch of times that she loves both Grimm and Oro, but she seems to love Oro more. The books are trying really, really hard to paint Grimm as the bad boy that she's tempted by, but she's meant to be with Oro, except these books are very obviously trying to make Isla x Grimm the canon ship, like the two of them will be together at the end. So insisting to us repeatedly that she loves Oro makes me feel like the book thinks that I'm dumb and that I don't know what's going on.
This bitch think I'm stupid.
So they go to a village that's been hit by the storms, and Isla's like, whoa, the storms are bad! But they aren't as bad as they could be because the people all have underground shelters, which would definitely flood in a big storm, so those aren't actually very helpful. However, I want to give this book one bit of credit, and that's that back when the curses were going on, the people of Nightshade couldn't walk around at night, so they built tunnels so that they could stay indoors and move around a little bit. And that's where the shelters are now. I'm kind of amazed that Alex Astor actually thought through the implications of something that she wrote into her fantasy world, but for once, she has done that. So their storm season begins, and Isla flies Wraith through the storm. Somehow he's able to do that, even though entire forests are described as being ripped up out of the ground. You'd think that those forests would all already be gone if storms come through and do this all the time, but, you know, whatever. They see a fleet of ships just sailing through this, and somehow they haven't sunk, so Isla lands on them and starts looking around for oracles, because you remember, in this world there are oracles. There's people who see the future. Easy to forget about them, but they're fucking there. They have to be a thing because protagonists can't simply have goals and work towards them. She has to be destined to do the things. She has to be born better than everyone else. Why would you want a protagonist who comes from humble beginnings or works for anything? I had to move my microphone. But the point is, these ships are sailing around and Isla just lands on one of them, and there's no one on deck. Even though, again, they're in the middle of a big storm, you'd think there'd be people running around trying to keep it from sinking, trying to make sure it moves properly. That's not a thing. There's no one below deck either, except for Cleo, the Moonling Queen. And she tells Isla that she killed all the oracles, and only she knows what they said, and she won't tell Isla. And Isla's like, "Grr, you suck," and then she leaves.
He's drunk?
He's not drunk.
I am drunk!
You're not drunk.
He sounds drunk.
I am drunk. You're not drunk. Stop saying that.
Luckily, Nightshade has other people that can see the future. They have prophets that Isla can visit, sort of. There was an old Nightshade prophet who wrote all of his predictions of the future down in a book, and his book is guarded by disciples, of him, and now Isla has to go and find them. But she first has to meet her old guardians and threaten their lives because they dared to criticize her and her husband Grimm, and no one can do that, not even her oldest friends and confidants, because the world revolves around Isla and Grimm. Also, all the Nightbane flowers have died, and now there's no more healing elixir. You may think that this comes back and is somehow important to the plot, but it's not. I can promise you, it's not. It's just a thing they reference a couple of times. Anyways, Isla and Grimm need to go meet the prophets, so they go climb a mountain, and they're going through the mountain, and there's like magical traps and stuff, so there's a tunnel, they get flooded out, etc. Not a whole lot happens here. Still, she laughed without humor. You must be thrilled about our current circumstances, then? No, not particularly. I'm watching my injured wife shiver like a leaf in a storm in front of me. She glared at him over her shoulder. Stop calling me that. A leaf in a storm? Her eyes narrowed further. Wife? Yes, she hissed. No. I hate both of these people so much. Like, it's not even that they do awful things, it's that they're just fucking annoying and stupid all the time. So they fight a giant grasshopper. That's how it's described. It's described as looking like a giant grasshopper. And it basically, it doesn't take them very long to get through all of this. You know, they just go through some traps and some monsters and stuff, and then they find the prophets. And they tell Isla that the storms are coming from another portal to a different world. This portal wasn't made on purpose. It's been, like, cracked open somehow, and Grimm hasn't known about it. He's unaware of it. So no one knows exactly where the storm is, or where the portal is, or how to close it, but that's where the storms are coming from. Isla also asks the prophets how long she'll live. The prophets tell her, well, you see, there is yet another future seer who's just called the Augur, and if she wants to know, she has to go talk to him. So she has to go on another journey to find him. Like, look, rather than splitting up these two storylines and doing them back to back, it would have been better for it to just be one long storyline, and then at the end, Isla gets all the information she needs. You know, that way it would feel like there's actual progress being made, because just throwing words on a page doesn't make something a book. Also, there is a traitor in her midst. Like, there's a wildling who apparently is the one that poisoned the Nightbane, and the prophets tell her, follow the snakes to find the traitor. So she goes to her friend Asul, and he gives her advice. He tells her to fly into the storm with a gemstone, capture some of the power, and then smash the stone, and the power will return to its source. I guess it kind of makes sense the way it's described. I don't know. Maybe there's some plot holes in there, but I honestly don't care enough to go looking. So he gives her a ring, and then she fucks off with it. Later, Grimm actually murders someone who voiced suspicions about Isla, and Isla overhears it. And the thing is, Isla has gone behind Grimm's back several times already, so this guy was right to be suspicious of her. But don't you dare insinuate that she's incompetent or malicious in any way, because she is perfect and selfless at all times. Grimm is the equivalent of a parent who one of their kids tattles on the other, so they hit the one that tattled and leave the one that did something worth punishing alone. That's what Grimm is. Isla goes to the Augur and gives him blood and some hearts from several dead people. I could elaborate on that, but no. All you need to know is that Isla killed several people and brought their hearts to the Augur, and we're just supposed to take her word for it that they all deserved it. The Augur also doesn't know where the portal is or how to close it. He has no valuable information throughout this whole book, really. This is followed by a horny scene where Grimm gives Isla chocolate and licks it off her lips, and she gets horny over it. I'll admit, this isn't the weirdest horny scene I've ever read. Like, there's dumber things to get excited about. Somebody tries to assassinate Isla, but Lynx, her pet leopard, saves her. Remember, she has a pet leopard and she named him Lynx? That's the level we're working with. As the assassin lies on the floor bleeding, Isla finishes him off, and there's no subtext here. The book just straight up says that she enjoys killing him. Do with that what you will. In order to send a message, she brings the assassin's head to the throne room surrounded by a bunch of other people, and she has snakes eat it, and she's like, this guy tried to kill me. This is what'll happen to you if you try to kill me. And they're like horrified and scared of Isla or something. Look, if you're going to have a subplot where she tries to navigate court politics and assert herself in her new home, that would be kind of cool. But you need to have an actual subplot. You can't just have one scene where she intimidates people with something that they've probably seen this sort of thing done a dozen times. Given the number of people that Grimm murders for no real reason, and the way that people also throughout all of Nightshade just seem to murder each other for no real reason, they've probably seen shit like this a million times. Isla doing this isn't going to scare anyone, but whatever. Isla also finds a magic feather that writes words on parchment. Apparently it has a piece of Aurora's soul. Do you remember Aurora, the lady who first started the curses that died back in the first book? Yeah, a piece of her soul is in the feather. The feather is originally from the other world. She can talk now.
That's just actually gay.
Yeah, and my face just actually looks like your ass.
So anyways, Isla and Grimm decide to get married again. They're already married, but they're going to do it again with a public wedding. And Oro shows up outside her window one night. He still loves her. He misses her, etc. A storm brews, and Isla says, okay, finally, I can go off and trace the origins, find where the portal is. And she goes off, and her and Grimm fly on Wraith's back for a while, but she loses the ring with the gemstone that Azul gave her, and they crash, and they get injured. And they're fine, but they get injured, and Grimm dotes on her for a while, and then she portals back to her room, and Oro dotes on her too. Do you remember how she has like a star stick that she can use to make portals and go pretty much anywhere? Yeah, that's a thing. She uses that all the time. But anyways, Oro dotes on her too, because wish fulfillment. You know, don't you want a bunch of hot psychopaths to dote on you when you're injured, audience? She tells Oro that she has to marry Grimm, and he's sad about it. But then someone else tries to kill her because it doesn't matter why. And then Grimm and Isla get married in public again, and she's really horny. There's nothing unusual or interesting about the wedding ceremony. This could have been an opportunity to showcase some of the culture of the Nightshades, but whatever, doesn't matter. And I'm not sure why it was here other than for it to be yet another scene where they look at each other and go, I love you so much, pumpkin, spite, whatever they call each other. They have actual nicknames for each other, but those are even stupider than the one I just tried to come up with, and I'm not refilming that, fuck you. Maybe they only got married so that they can make all of their future sex that they're going to be having right in the eyes of the Lord. Wouldn't want to be living in sin now. But, spoiler alert, Isla does cheat on Grimm later in this very same book, but it's okay because she's the main character. So after the wedding, they go out and they see that hundreds of graves have been torn up, seemingly by a wildling, via their like earth magic stuff that they have or whatever. And my first thought was that, okay, they're looking for something in these graves, but no one else seems to think that. And anyways, a snake appears and Isla follows it. So she thinks, oh, okay, my wildling guardians, they're the ones that tore up all these graves. She doesn't stop and wonder why they did it. She just thinks that, yes, clearly they did it. And she orders them imprisoned despite them proclaiming their innocence because she's just so badass. You know, that's what a strong female character is, right? That's someone who's just a bitch to all their friends all the time. So she needs to find the ring that Azul gave her and she lost, and rather than just asking for another one, she goes to the blacksmith. So the smith tells her about these things called skyres, which are basically just runes, you know, you draw them on something, and they're a magic thing that she can use to track down the ring with. So we have to track down a thing, to track down a thing, to track down something else, before we can even begin fixing the problem that this book began with an introduction to. Alright, Isla thinks that maybe Aurora knows something about skyres, maybe she knows how to use them. So she asks the feather about it. The feather says that it wants redemption. Look, I'll be honest, I just straight up don't care about all these small plot beats, because none of them go anywhere, none of them make sense, they fit together awkwardly. The whole book so far has been trying to trace the origin of the storms, and nothing has actually happened. We're going to start skipping over some of this small stuff. Here are some of these small details that I want to tell you about, with no context. A bunch of authors in Nightshade have written smut about Grimm. Like, Isla goes to the library and there's a bunch of smut about her husband written there. That's canon to this universe. There are books full of smut that people have written about their king because he's just that hot. Did you know that there's an island which is called Isla? Did you know what Isla meant in Spanish? Grimm repeatedly refers to Isla as Heart Eater, which, if you remember back in the first book when the curses were going on, wildlings had to eat human hearts. That was the only thing they could eat. Other food just didn't work for them. And so him calling her Heart Eater kind of feels like a racial slur, but I guess it's endearing because he's hot. Before Grimm took over, it was customary for Nightshade rulers to have dozens of children and then have them fight to the death. But the thing is, when Grimm's father saw how powerful Grimm was, he just killed all of his siblings. He's like, well, you don't need to prove yourself. You're just that cool. I feel like that's this entire series in a fucking nutshell right there. But yeah, this is a thing that gets brought up, and it's so out of nowhere that it fucking hurts. It's like the book is trying desperately to reassure us, no, he's evil, but it's only because his dad was mean. He's just a poor, wounded bird. Like, it's just edge without anything resembling a point.
This is stupid! This is stupid! 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 Stupid!
I've seen something kind of like this done before in Prince of Thorns, but in that book it worked because it doesn't try to excuse the fact that the main character, Jorg, is an evil piece of shit. It just shows that, yeah, he's an evil piece of shit because of all the abuse he went through. And it also makes some of his current actions make sense because, like, okay, he mostly just wants power because he associates not having power with being horribly abused. So, like, it actually makes sense there. This adds nothing to Grimm as a character. Anyways, after 209 pages, we finally get our first sex scene. It's dumb to wait that long because that's really just what the fucking audience is here for. It's also far more explicit than young adults should be, but that really just doesn't matter anymore these days. So he into her, and then her, and then he her until the night was almost over, and then he... How romantic. So Grimm shows Isla a library that he has, and she looks around for information on Skyres. The Feather Aurora tells her that there's a book which is cursed to stay closed so no one can open it, and it contains information on Skyres. But Isla is immune to the curse because girl boss. She just finds the book and she can just open it and read it. So mentioning that it was cursed really doesn't add anything. The characters all go on for a little while about how rulers only exist to serve their people, but also Grimm is willing to kill everyone to save Isla, and he literally just says this repeatedly. Like, he literally just says, I will kill everyone in the world if it means that you're okay. This isn't subtext. This is just a thing he says, and somehow no one ever points this out. This is such contradictory bullshit.
Unlikely things for a cricket commentator to say.
The Indians may have pipped us here, but let's not forget, we slaughtered them in their millions.
Anyways, the augur has the corpse of the original prophet that was alive a long time ago, and he gives Isla one of the prophet's teeth so that she can write a Skyre on it, which is pretty metal, admittedly. That is pretty cool. He also tells her that her guardians aren't the ones that betrayed her. So she tries writing a Skyre on the tooth, and then she screws up and passes out. And while she's passed out, a nearby village is attacked by a wildling, and people think it's Isla, which would make sense. There's not a whole lot of wildlings in this area. But Isla says she didn't do it, and so there's no need to investigate further. Kill anyone you want, Heart, he had said before. I will never judge you. His words had once been a balm, a sigh of relief that someone could see the worst in her without flinching. Now she wondered if it had been permission for the worst part of her to roam free. I hate these people so much. This is an entire traditionally published book series which only exists so that people can fantasize about being able to do whatever they want and have people love them for it. Also, Isla has memory problems in this book too. She's had memory problems in all three books. Remember, like in the first one, she had a lot of her memories erased by Grimm, and then in the second one, she slowly regained them, and then in this one, there's like stuff going on that she doesn't remember or wasn't present, therefore she doesn't remember. It's different memory problems. Find a new way to introduce mystery into your story, please. Anyways, a woman appears and she attacks and kidnaps Isla, and her name is Lark Crown. She's one of the founders of Lightlark. She was probably mentioned at some point before this, but I don't remember, and I don't care enough to go back and check. Isla is descended from her, though. That's why they have the same last name. Anyways, Lark is the evil wildling that's been going around. She wants to kill Grimm and Oro and use their power to build a whole new world. And this is the traitor that has been, digging up graves and stuff. But that's stupid because she's not actually a traitor. The future tellers said that there was a traitor. I guess maybe they were thinking, oh, well, you're both wildlings, so if one of you goes against the other, then by default, yeah, that's treason. Which is slightly racist, but also it's just a stupid cop-out. Like, Lark is not a character we've known before this point. We're not upset by her betraying us. Like, if one of Isla's friends, who she's known for years and has been in the story for a long time, if one of them betrayed her, it might mean something. But this is just such a nothing plot twist that I'm honestly kind of impressed. Like, you could reveal that the evil wildling that had been going around in the shadows was Batman. It would have the same amount of emotional attachment for the characters. So Lark lets Isla go because plot. She stops an army attacking Grimm. She goes and sees the blacksmith again, and he gives her some really cool, badass armor so the main character can be badass while she goes off and does cool, badass things. And he finally remembers his name. This whole time he's just been called the blacksmith. His name is Ferrar, which means to sheath in armor in Spanish. Yeah, I've mentioned this before, but a lot of characters in these books their names are just random Spanish words. And Ferrar, the blacksmith, is afraid that if Lark comes and takes over, she's going to enslave him and make him build weapons that she will use for horrible things, so he begs Isla to kill him, and she does. It might have been more impactful if we didn't have that moment earlier in the book where she already promised to do it, but whatever. Lark is raising an army of the dead, which she can do. That's why she was going through all the graves earlier. And they can't kill her, as far as they know, so they decide to banish her to another world instead. And Isla realized that the Prophet's book that they were looking at earlier had some missing pages in it, and the missing pages are somewhere on Lightlark, so she portals over to a spot, and then she does a magical thing with Oro. It really doesn't matter. It's happened a million times by this point. They go somewhere magical to find a thing or find information for plot reasons. You know the drill. Her and Oro go off and do that, and then they have sex.
I've never heard wind like it.
Is this my wake?
Howling like a banshee it was.
Am I in hell?
So somehow she finds the ring that had Asul's power in it. She fights with Oro because we need drama. And I really gotta say, do either of the men in this love triangle, Grimm and Oro, do either of them represent anything? You know, does one represent Isla's past, but the other one represents her future? Does one represent healing and the other one represent revenge? Does one represent the desire to just live a simple life and the other one represent the desire and responsibilities that come with ruling over people or something? No, neither of them do that? Okay, you know. It's not like these books are trying to do a weird dichotomy where Isla has powers of life and death at the same time. You know, maybe one leg of the love triangle could represent life and he's actually always creating things and trying to make the world better, but the other one represents death, and as much as she loves him, he can only ever destroy things, and his solution to every problem is to try and fight and kill people. So then Isla decides she doesn't love him, you know, maybe you could do something with that.
Disappointed!
Anyways, there's a final battle, because there has to be a fucking final battle. She has to kill Oro to end the connection between rulers and their people, because remember, if the ruler of the people dies, then all the people die as well. Or if they die and there's no heirs for them, then all the people die as well. It's like a weird hostage situation they have going on here. And somehow if she kills Oro, that will break the connection and end things. It doesn't really go anywhere in this book, so it's just there. Isla is apparently the last person who's descended from the magical gods/kings who originally created this world that they live in. She gets captured by Lark, again, but wait, she absorbs the powers of everyone she kills? I don't remember if that was a thing. It might have been. I could easily have forgotten it, but let's not pretend either of us fucking cares. So she uses the blacksmith's powers to escape her bonds, and then she runs off and she finds a letter that her dad wrote about how amazing she is. It's several pages long and we get to read all of it. And the letter steals her resolve because she's like, oh yeah, someone tells me how amazing I am. That's what I need to have the willpower to continue. She's had like a dozen moments like that in these books so far, so it really doesn't mean much. It's not just tiresome. It makes me wonder if the author has ever actually gone back and read over her own stuff. Like, is there any editing process? Did she just write it and then send it out? I don't know. So Isla somehow summons one of the storms, she can do that now, and she fights Lark, and she manages to banish her to the other world. And right at the end we learn that this other world that they came from is actually called Skyshade. Because that's what people do, you know, they name the dimension that they live in. That's a thing they do. Whatever, title drop. It's called Skyshade, but as Isla banishes Lark to that other world, she's also pulled in there too. And then the book ends.
What the hell was that?
So just like Nightbane, this is a book with maybe 100 pages worth of story, which is stretched out to nearly 400 fucking pages, because Alex Astor is seemingly unable to understand things like pacing, so she just throws in 1,000 small subplots that are introduced and then immediately resolved in short order, so the books wind up feeling like an assembly line of bullshit. You know, they have many small piles of bullshit, which come together and form a much bigger pile of shit. I will give it some credit that it's not as obnoxious with its length as a lot of other modern fantasy is. You know, like, it's longer than it needs to be, but it's not an actual doorstop. You know, again, it's less than 400 pages. That's an appropriate length for a fantasy book, I think. But what's even going on here? What is any of this? Because the first book, Lightlark, was supposedly about a deadly tournament to break some curses. The second book, Nightbane, was an excuse to show flashbacks where Isla and Grimm... I refuse to say they fall in love, but the author insists they fall in love in the flashbacks, and all the present-day stuff is just secondary, so it winds up feeling like nothing is happening and there was no progress in Book 2. What is the third book? What is Skyshade? It introduces a new villain, kind of out of nowhere, but there's no through lines except Isla is amazing and the love triangle, but in this one, Isla doesn't even really do anything that impressive. Like, the first two books, she did some impressive stuff. It was still very stupid and poorly done, but you could at least look at it and go, yeah, she did something cool there. That's not the case in this one. Did you know there's planned to be 5 fucking Lightlark books before it ends? Yeah, we're only 60% of the way through this journey, because everything must be stretched beyond its breaking point now.
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god! What is that?
I'll be honest, I don't think there's a way that you can fix this. Like, at least not this particular book. Maybe when the series is done, we can look back on it and see what it did right and say, okay, if we could tweak these, maybe it would have been alright. But I don't think there's a way you can fix Skyshade. And remember, I'm the guy who earnestly tried to fix Onision's books. You can go watch my video on that from several years ago if you're curious. As bad as Stones to Abigail is, I could usually, while reading, I could see what Greg was going for with it. You know, obviously it's trying to make the main character look cool and smart all the time, which is also what Lightlark does, but beyond that, the book does try to tell a story with conflict and actual stakes. You know, it has stuff like a school shooting, and the main character's best friend dying in a car crash, and all of Abby's mental struggles. Like, those things are there to make the world and characters feel like they're doing something, and like we're getting some sort of insight into the human condition by reading about them. They fail at it, they fail very, very badly at it, but you could see what they were going for, and same with the other books that Greg eventually wrote. So I could hypothetically rewrite his stuff without completely changing everything. The core could be left intact. But in Skyshade, there's just nothing to work with here. There's no real connecting themes or story. There's just a bunch of moments and character relationships that largely stay the same while maintaining an illusion of stuff changing. Even if I like a few of the ideas in this series, like the once-in-a-century tournament, or the island shrouded by storms, or there's a break in the fabric of reality, so now there's these massive storms that are killing people, I have no idea how to put them together in any way that would actually make sense. If there was anything to work with, I could hypothetically piece this together and go, okay, yeah, Lightlark would actually be pretty good if we changed a few things. But, there's just nothing to work with by the time we get to the third book. Every character is simply a prop. Even Isla. They all just move and act in a way that their author god tells them to. There's no sense that any of them have an inner world with thoughts and feelings of their own. There's no sense that they come from somewhere and have a backstory. They feel like they popped into existence and then sat in a room until the plot needed them. Isla and Grimm have a lot of time dedicated to their backstories, but even they don't feel like they came from somewhere. Their backstory only comes up when there's an excuse for one of them to do something cool, or trying to justify why Grimm is such an asshole. Like, this is just kids playing with action figures, except far less wholesome. I kind of feel like Alex Astor realized at some point that God isn't real, and so she's trying to make herself God of her own world? I don't know, I get that vibe from these fucking books. There's nothing here to enjoy, and to encourage me to look past the bad stuff, except for the occasional moments that are just so bad that they're funny, like some of the details I went over earlier, I do find funny. But there's no purposeful humor here, or action that grabbed me. There's not a single character that I liked reading about. There's no interesting themes to chew over and think about. There is just nothing here. You know, it's really easy to look back and say that things were better when I was a kid. You know, things like video games, books, movies, etc. Usually when people say crap like that, they're saying that because when they were kids, they just had lower standards. But that's why I usually don't say things like that. But I do genuinely think, because as an adult, I've read a bunch of young adult novels. Some of them have been okay, but most of them have been crappy, and it's just been for your entertainment. And I can confidently look back and say that, yeah, these were better in my day. You know, fantasy stuff like Percy Jackson and Aragon, those aren't perfect, but they have, you know, characters and plots with like twists and turns and world building that makes some sort of sense. And Lightlark is clearly taking heavy inspiration from Shadow and Bone, which I have also read, and I think those books are good. You know, nothing to write home about really, but they're good, they're enjoyable. And the reason they're enjoyable is that they weren't trying to be anything other than themselves. And I think that's part of why they were such a massive success, you know? The author wasn't writing them and thinking, oh, it's like the Hunger Games, but insert asinine twist here. She thought, it's Shadow and Bone. It doesn't need to be like anything else, it just needs to be itself. You remember those terrible Twilight ripoffs that dominated pop culture for several years? Yeah, those all had 100 times more effort put into them than this crap did. And I'll be honest, Lightlark has more effort put into it than most young adult fantasy. That doesn't necessarily make it better, it just makes it clear that the writer was trying harder. Paranormal romance at least usually remembered that characters are separate entities. You know, they didn't always have distinct personalities, but they weren't just there to be extensions of main character girl. Isla is literally the center of everything. No one else, except Grimm occasionally, can ever do anything important or even contribute to the story. It is all Isla all the time. The whole world seems to consist of maybe 10 people, all of whom exist to serve Isla in some way. Even Isla seems to exist solely to serve Isla, if that makes sense. Like, it feels as if the character has been subsumed by the idea of what the character is supposed to be. The romance in paranormal romance was usually better too, with some exceptions, like, you know, Everneath, don't feel like talking about that, but love interests in those they were often abusive or just, you know, douchebags, but there was an attempt to justify what they did. You know, a common one was, oh, he's not controlling, he's just being protective. But with Grimm, it's just sort of accepted that he's an awful person and we're supposed to like him. Not in spite of him being awful, but because he's awful. As if all of his awfulness is... that's the point. There were a lot of bad dystopian novels too. I'm currently making my way through one. We'll see when the video on that comes out. That should be kind of fun. But there were many bad dystopian novels too. Those at least usually had a plot/motivation that made some sort of sense. You know, there's an evil government and the heroes want to overthrow it and fix people's lives. In Lightlark, Isla wants to do what exactly? Like, she wants to react to whatever new bullshit is threatening the kingdoms that the author just made up? I honestly couldn't tell you. It seriously... I'm kind of an old man, but it seriously feels like back in 2015 or 2016, everyone just fucking gave up. And yet, I'm still here, because there needs to be someone who will point out what's good and what's terrible, even if people don't care or don't appreciate them in their time. Like, even if none of you watch my positive videos, I make plenty of those, but very few of you seem to watch those, maybe I can shift the culture in some small way so we can all start caring more. And if nothing else, at least people in the future will know that, hey, we weren't all idiots. We weren't all sitting around clapping like seals when crap like Lightlark came across our visual field. Like, some of us knew, a lot of us knew. And at least I can glean some sort of insight into something or other by overthinking all this crap. That's all. Have a lovely day. Hello! Thank you for watching this far. You see all these names here? These are my patrons. My $10 and up patrons are Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santodes, Carolina Clay, Ikbin Longveilig, Lexi Delorme, Liza Rudakova, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. A5013, Proscriptions of Dwojang, Rovi, PsychXS, Slumbering Jellyfish, Observing Outer Space, Tesla Shark, Toa Michael, Vevictus, and Wesley. Oh, that's a bit of a mouthful. Thanks to all you guys, I couldn't do this without you. If you want to get your name on here, then consider donating. If you don't feel like donating on Patreon, you can also become a channel member. You get access to early videos and one exclusive video per month, and also just my undying gratitude. You're all great. I love you. Have a lovely day. I think this is the part where I'm supposed to say goodbye, but also don't forget to like the video, comment, and subscribe. That's all fun.